Hi there, I'm Lori. I'm the owner of Rising Tides Healing Center. A few slides talking a little bit about trauma and workplaces and offering some programs that we might be able to share with you to help you in your particular situation. So, the overarching theme of this presentation is just about managing the mental health of employees and managing crisis interventions when something traumatic does occur. What we've learned in our work is that a lot of times workplaces don't know what to do when something happens in the workplace, or the thing they've always done just doesn't seem to be working as effectively as it once was. The field of trauma is sort of gaining traction. There's a lot more research. There's a lot more understanding about what we need to do to effectively manage people's needs. So I'm just going to share a little bit of that with you in this presentation. So thanks for hopping on and learning a little bit more. The cost of mental illness in workplaces is on the rise. So, about 30% of disability claims in Canada are now related to mental health issues. Canadians are spending a lot of money when it comes to managing their mental health, which is great that they're taking the initiative to care for themselves, but it does come at quite a significant cost. A lot of EAP programs or insurance benefits are funded by employers. So, while we're glad people are accessing the benefits and services that are available to them, we're also recognizing just the demand and how much need there is out there right now for people who are struggling. So we don't want to ignore that. And we also want to be looking at the cost of lost productivity. So whether that's people taking more sick days, just being unmotivated or unproductive when they are at work, short-term disability, long-term disability. I mean, it's not great for anybody. It's not great for the person who's struggling, but it's also not great for the employer to be trying to manage and keep a team functioning and running when people aren't well. So we don't want to ignore this problem. The impact of stress and trauma on individuals can actually be quite impactful and severe. 76% of Canadians will experience a traumatic event in their lifetime, and that number is more reflective of people who will be impacted by what they have experienced. 100% of people will probably be impacted by something that is interpreted in their body as traumatic. But 8% of Canadians over their lifespan will meet the diagnostic criteria of post traumatic stress disorder. And of those people, about 50% will have other symptoms of depression. And that can include things like anxiety symptoms, substance abuse, suicidal ideation. So just having exposure to trauma can lead to PTSD, but it can also lead to other stress related symptoms that can be worrisome too and need care. So we're just asking the question, can you afford not to come up with a plan? I always like to share this quote from Gabor Mate. Trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And I really think that's an important part of understanding trauma because it's not measured by the extent of what happened. It's not the severity of the event that's going to influence whether a person will develop PTSD or stress and trauma symptoms. It's more about what happens inside of them. And that's something that none of us can see. Every single person has their own story of, what has happened to them in the past, previous experiences. So it's just really important to understand trauma isn't just about if A happens, then B will fix it. We do need to start understanding what it means to experience trauma and how that can affect people differently. So, when we talk about trauma, we're talking about the long term symptoms. We're not talking about just the trauma itself. I think when we think of physical health, we tend to think of the trauma is if I break my arm. Well, the trauma is when my arm actually got broken and what happened to my body. With emotional trauma, we're more talking about what's happening after the fact. So, as humans, when we're exposed to a traumatic event, our body does have a nervous system that should regulate and get us through that distress. But sometimes we get stuck at a certain point in our response, and we can live for long periods of time still re-experiencing those symptoms over and over again. So trauma can harm a person's sense of safety, their sense of who they are, their ability to regulate their emotions, navigate relationships. I would think many of you are probably nodding your head right along with me because sometimes you're going to have employees or people on your work site that are struggling, not getting along with people. Maybe they're angry, something's going on and you just don't know how to help them through it. And sometimes trauma can be at the root of that. Long after trauma occurs, people can feel this powerless and helplessness. So it's not a time heals all wounds. People who have been exposed to trauma and haven't had support, this can endure throughout a lifetime. So it's not that after a period of time, it will just go away. We tend to look at trauma in terms of three types. The first one is the acute type of trauma, and that's the type of trauma that usually has a shock value associated with it. So that's like a car accident, a violent incident, something that happens that was unexpected and creates a shock response in the body. It's one particular thing. Maybe everything else in this person's life was going okay, but this acute trauma has really dysregulated them and stopped them in their ability to function. A chronic trauma works a little bit differently because it kind of occurs over a span or period of time. And that tends to be things that we would associate as a little t trauma, meaning it's not the big stuff that we know is traumatic, but it's the smaller stuff like bullying, harassment, uh, emotional abuse. It could be, the loss of a dating relationship or a pet. It happens kind of over a period of time, but it's distressing nonetheless. So again, remembering it's not the severity of the event that affects how people will cope, but also how long have they been in this period of stress. And then complex trauma just tends to be a little more complicated because this is somebody who might have a number of things going on in their life that are traumatic. So somebody may be exposed to domestic violence at home, but maybe at work, their job exposes them to a high degree of death or accident or just helplessness. So it becomes more complex when there's more than one thing happening. I alluded to this just a second ago, and really just what I want to highlight is that trauma isn't always the big T stuff. We tend to know that if somebody is a victim of a sexual assault, or if they have a life threatening illness, or if they've been in an accident, we know that, we got to make sure this person gets some attention because they might be harmed by the event and what's happening inside. But the little t traumas we don't want to forget about either, because they can have the same impact on a person who's exposed over a period of time. Harassment and violence. I bring this one up because it also has lingering impacts on workplaces. Litigations and complaints about harassment in the workplace are on the rise. So when we think about how to support our teams, it's good to know 71.3% of Canadians have experienced some type of harassment in their workplace. 3 in 10 Canadians say their workplace isn't a safe environment. So when you think about that in a trauma lens, that just means 3 in 10 people aren't going to be able to function well in their day-to-day assignments if they don't feel like they're in a safe place. That's going to contribute to a constant feeling of dysregulation and not being able to effectively be present and do their job. So again, this one has a little more cost. We want to help you come up with some strategies so that you can create a psychologically safe and well working environment to buffer or cushion your employees against some of these concerns. So, how can Rising Tides help you? Well, we would like to be part of your planning process in helping you to create an environment that promotes positive mental health for your employees. Having a plan in place, just having a plan can help employees feel safer. They know what to do. They know where to access the help. There's things you can do to make the environment feel safer for everyone. Creating psychologically safe and healthy workplaces can help people thrive, not just at work, but in their family and their relationships as well. And, having a safe, reputable working environment can also be good for business. It means people want to work there. They're happier to be there. They tell their friends that it's a good place. People care about each other. That doesn't come by accident. So at Rising Tides, we are a trauma focused clinic, which means we always look at our clients and our communities and the people that we're working with through that lens of trauma, like what has happened to these individuals and how can we give them opportunities to feel more empowered, to have choice in what happens to them. So it's just about looking at what we're already doing and seeing if we can improve that by looking through a trauma focused lens. We offer obviously individual therapy, but we're also committed to sharing this with our communities that we work with and to employers. And yeah, we want to be part of your plan. So we have two offerings right now. One is a half-day workshop. This is more educationally based. It's an overview, kind of an extension of what I've highlighted here. What is trauma? How does it affect our bodies? How does it affect our brain? How does it affect our relationships? What are some of the warning signs that maybe I'm starting to struggle with what I've been exposed to? We want to talk about some skill building, some resiliency, some things that we can do to cushion or prevent people from developing stress and trauma symptoms. So this is a structured educational workshop with some opportunities to practice some of these strategies, but it also can be a little bit tailored to your particular population and needs. And the second thing we offer at this time is a group trauma reprocessing session. So, this is actually a therapeutic session. And we would come in after there's been a traumatic event in the workplace or a situation where people are more than one person is struggling. We offer it in a group, and it is meant to help shift what has happened so that it doesn't get stuck in that person's body or nervous system. So the GTAP, it's based in EMDR. The GTAP process is about working together as a group, but it's also not about sharing the details. Sometimes group therapy, we automatically go to it sitting around talking about what happened. And that's not what GTAP is all about. It's about being in a group, having the support of a group, but being able to work through the parts of the experience that have impacted the individual. So we have trained facilitators who can lead you through that experience. And that's it in a nutshell. So if you saw something on here that piqued your interest or you want to learn a little bit more about, I would encourage you to reach out to us at the contact information provided on this slide, and we'd be glad to set up a time to meet and chat and see what we can do to help you. Thank you.